Sometimes short books are the best books. There are a lot of large books out there that are stuffed full of needless fluff. And then there are short books that are filled with nothing but diamonds. The two best books on faith are short books that are filled with nothing but diamonds. I reviewed one a couple of years ago. It is the book Faith and Saving Faith by Gordon Clark. If you can get your hands on this 1983 book by the Trinity Foundation, do not pass it up. Clark's study on faith is one of the best word studies ever. Well, following that one close behind Clark's work is another excellent book, although it's short in the same way, and that's the book called The Faith That Saves by Fred J. and John Correa. The two men present an exegetical and theological analysis on the nature of New Testament faith. This one was published in 2008 by Graceline. And this book has zero fillers, no side dishes. This one's all main course. It was such an enjoyable and enlightening study that I am certain, along with Clark's work, I will come back to it again and again during my own studies. The authors present the argument that when it comes to the faith that saves, the faith that allows us to receive the atoning work of Jesus Christ, faith is faith. There isn't this quality name brand version of faith that saves, and then a sub-quality generic brand of faith that doesn't save. God isn't testing people's faith to determine if it is strong enough, outspoken enough, or have persevered through a certain number of trials. But faith is faith, whether it's weak faith or strong faith. The key, as a quote from Charlie Bing in this book points out, is that it is not the quality of one's faith that matters, but the object of one's faith. And that is looking to Jesus Christ is what saves. And if you have a few minutes, I would like to tell you a little bit more about what you can expect to find in the book, The Faith That Saves. Fred and John's defense of the free grace view of faith, which just so happens to align with what we find in Gordon Clark's book, Faith and Saving Faith. Welcome to Rev Reads. If you want to discover more books that will help you to understand the gospel of Jesus Christ, please subscribe to the channel in order to stay up to date with the most current book reviews. Also, please like and share this video. Your likes, your shares, what will allow others to know this high quality work by Che and Correa. And I want to say thank you to the Buy Me a Coffee members whose support allows me to cover the costs of keeping up with Rev Reads so that I can produce new reviews. And if you have benefited from this channel, I would love for you to consider supporting Rev Reads at a beginning membership price of only $3 a month. The first thing that I want to cover when it comes to the faith that saves is that the reader should know going into this that even though this book is skinny, this is a serious theological study. And the reader will want to have, I don't think you need a high level of Greek and Hebrew, but at least a minimum ability to read or pronounce the Greek and Hebrew characters, and then know the basics of Greek grammar, as this book even goes a little bit into what I would call intermediate issues on Greek grammar. So this isn't written for everyone, but for those who can handle the basics of the Greek text, you will love this book. The authors first present a great look at the lexicography of faith, or as it is in the Greek New Testament, the word pistis. This is a great look at faith and how definitions have been shifting on faith in recent years. I found the place where they pointed out the change in the definition of pistis, or faith, from the second to the third edition of the English lexicon by Bauer, Ardent, and Gringich. They have changed the definition of faith from trust, belief in a special sense, as faith in the divinity that lays special emphasis on trust. The object of faith is God and Christ. To now, in the third edition of the lexicon, it says, to entrust oneself to an entity in complete confidence, believe in, trust, with the implication of total commitment to the one who is trusted. So pistis from the second edition to the third edition went from convinced to commitment. And then by looking at the uses of pistis in the Septuagint and the New Testament, they show why we should stick with the definition in the second edition of the lexicon and not go along with the shift to the third. Actually, after reading this while I was midway through the book, I immediately went online and purchased a used copy of the second edition of Baghdad as a result of reading this book. In the next chapter, they look at syntactical issues, such as how significant should we take it when someone believes in Jesus versus when someone believes upon Jesus or someone believes that Jesus. And again, great work to show that people have built up some very theologically driven viewpoints based upon in or that, but they're more theologically driven and not textually driven. Third, they look at grammatical issues when it comes to faith. A great look at the importance of Greek tenses and how they influence the way that we should regard our faith. Do we need to continue believing without fail in Jesus Christ from our first moment of faith up until the day of our death in order to persevere and receive final salvation? And they look at how the New Testament, based on grammar, presents that idea of faith. Really good work. I also recommend Tom Stiegel's work, Must Faith Endure for Salvation, to be sure, on this issue. Tom goes into a little bit more detail in his book, but both books present a strong argument that John is not so much concerned with whether a person continues believing as much as whether or not belief has occurred. The fourth and easily the largest portion of the book is the scriptural analysis. It covers 100 of the 150 pages in this book and examines specific and what I would say all the significant uses of faith in the New Testament. So the book covers the following texts. Acts chapter 8, verses 9 through 24, and the faith of Simon the magician. John chapter 2, verses 23 through 25, and the faith of those that Jesus did not in turn believe in. So they believed in Jesus, but Jesus didn't believe in them. John 3:36, and the parallel use of faith and disobedience. Should we take faith as obedience or disobedience as unbelief? John 12, verses 42 through 43, were the rulers who believed in Jesus and yet loved the approval of man, genuine believers. John chapter 8, verses 30 to 32, where Jesus says, if you continue in my words, you are truly my disciples. It was interesting that John Calvin on this verse even went as far as to saying John was inaccurate to call those in John 8:30 believers. Next is Romans chapter 1, verse 5, the passage on with the heart one believes to righteousness. Then Romans chapter 4 and the faith of Abraham. Galatians 5:6, and what does Paul mean when he says faith working through love? Romans 10, 9, and 10, and having those combined phrases of confess with your mouth and believe in your heart. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, and the question of, is faith a gift of God given only to the elect? Hebrews 10, 38 and 39, the righteous one who lives by faith, and if he shrinks back. And so the question, if we shrink back, does that mean we haven't really believed? And finally, the book ends with a long study on James 2 and faith without works. The authors set aside none of the significant passages on faith. They examine each one with care. And so this is wonderful scholarly research from beginning to end. Every pastor, every student, everyone who wants to dive deep into the meaning of faith in the New Testament, you should have this book on your bookshelf. So I highly recommend The Faith That Saves.